Ladies and gentlemen, this is Trezell West. This is Jacqueline West. And their two sons are missing. Their sons, Orrin and Orson, are missing. And we're here because it's easier to charge them than for them to explain why they couldn't find them.
The trial of Trezell and Jacqueline West is a doozy so far. Day one was Tuesday, March 28th, 2023, and we learned some weird things about the adoptive parents of missing California City boys Orrin and Orson West. This was the trial that you guys voted as the second most popular one in my poll that you wanted to see, behind Letitia Stauch's trial, which really gets into it next week, April 3rd. So here we go. Lots of notes.
Orson was in California City for about 4 days. At some point, Adrian heard a loud thud in the night. The day prior to hearing the thud, Orson was there. The day after the loud thud, Orson was gone, and he hasn't seen him since.
This was a tragic accident, is what the evidence will show. All right? They don't have an answer for it because it was tragic. But instead, Trezell is here on a murder charge. Cal City out the gate just never thought anyone would take two little black boys. That's why the investigation will look the way it did.
Ultimately, the answer to the question of where are the boys will be answered. It's that they're dead. And at the end of the case, I will ask you to return a verdict of guilty beyond a reasonable doubt as to Trezell and Jacqueline for the murders of Orrin and Orson West. This is the last known photo ever taken of Orrin. It's recovered from the cell phones that were seized in this case. This is the last known photo of Orson, taken in the apartment at Lotus Lane, July 25th, 2020. Now, during one of the interviews, and it'll be played for you here, Jacqueline West talks about how she talked to her kids about Orrin and Orson. She said, "I told them, pretend they're not here. Just act like they don't live here. Just go do your work." She talked about what she did with Orrin and Orson. "I always keep them separated. I keep them separated. I focus mainly on schooling while they're playing. They don't really play together, but they have played together. I just don't know." But that's essentially what happened to Orrin and Orson. They were in that home, but they were kept separate. And then ultimately, sometime in September, they were killed and have not been seen since then.
Unfortunately, I can't share the audio of the trial, but we learned a lot from opening statements, including the fact that Trezell sits down, he told a cop apparently, when he has to go number one, which might sound kind of weird, but I guess it's not all that weird for some guys. And we heard Jacqueline West talking to her oldest son, attempting to get him to lie. So opening statements started on day one. We're going to try and cover that and get through much of day two. And like some of you have commented, please forgive me for calling Orrin and Orson West by those names. That's how they're referred to in trial. That is how I'm referring to the boys now. Some people believe the boys should only be referred to as Classic and Sincere, which is what their biological mom named them. So there was lots of body cam footage played that we can't see, we can only hear. Let's cover what they talked about day one. Audio began streaming late. On the Kern County website, trials oftentimes begin late, so I missed only a few minutes of the prosecuting attorney Eric Smith's opening statements, but let's still go deep. Because places like KGET News were actually in the courtroom where the judge allowed for this video of the opening statements to be filmed. At a certain point, when the witnesses hit the stand, that's when the judge told the cameras to go off and to just stream the audio. Now, we can listen to the audio, we can take our own notes, we can use our own memories, but we can't record that audio and then play it here for you. I wish I could. I don't know if it's because it's a trial that involves juvenile victims. Little Orrin and Orson were only 3 and 4 when they went missing. Perhaps we'll get to see all this one day if discovery is released, if these two are found guilty. On day one, the 911 call that Trezell West made the night that the boys allegedly went missing in December of 2020, that was played. The dispatcher took the stand. Trezell sounded pretty calm. He was asking the dispatcher Has anyone seen two little black boys? We will go over that. That call came in at 5:41 p.m. Officers were dispatched at 5:46 p.m. and they made it to the house on Aspen Avenue at 5:48 p.m. That's when 4 California City police officers responded. They started searching for the boys. Now we have an inside view of what was going on in that house and why there was such turmoil, why cops sounded like they did not believe Jackie and Trezell, and what was happening when the community came out and searched en masse for these little boys. They were praying for the little boys, and Jackie and Trezell were just holed up in their house. Unfortunately, what we learned during the first day was that cops believe Orrin and Orson are gone off of this earth because of the testimony of Jacqueline and Trezell's oldest child. Their oldest son spoke about hearing a thud one night before the couple even moved to California City. And after that thud happened and one of the boys got sick, they never saw him again. Trezell and Jacqueline originally lived at 1526 Lotus Lane at an apartment. Then, after that thud happened and one boy disappeared, Trezell and Jacqueline moved to California City, to that famous house, 10717 Aspen Way. They're going to present DNA evidence from the home, which makes cops believe Orrin and Orson are no longer alive. Because it was Adrian, Jackie and Trezell's oldest son, who went through more than one interview with police. And apparently on December 28th, 2020, he told cops that while the family lived in Bakersfield, he heard noises coming from Orrin and Orson one night. That's when he said Orrin died. So there's going to be mention, as you'll see coming up, about one of the boys like getting sick or throwing up, and maybe Trezell going to just get a stethoscope and checking the boy, but they didn't call for help. According to this oldest child, Trezell and Jacqueline didn't call 911 to help him. Instead, that's when they started talking about keeping the death a secret. So now Orson only survived 4 days in California City in that new house. Again, a child heard a loud thud. After that, the next day, Orson was gone. So these loud thud statements, thankfully the other children were brave enough to tell the truth. That's what led to this long murder investigation of Trezell and Jacqueline West, who had called the cops, came up with this cockamamie story about just Trezell out in the yard throwing wood over the fence, going to make a fire because it was cold, and the 3- and 4-year-old boys, Orrin and Orson, allegedly just ran out the gate somewhere. We're going to talk about all the reasons that's likely impossible because of how heavy the gate was, and especially because of a lack of video evidence, a lack of witnesses. A lack of witnesses or anyone who claims who could really corroborate what Jackie and Trezell were saying. Jackie and Trezell used to have custody of 6 children, and Orrin and Orson were 2 of them. So Jackie and Trezell have their 2 biological children we'll talk about, and 2 other adopted children besides Orrin and Orson. And now all 4 of these kids are going to testify. So it's no wonder it's not being broadcast. The oldest boy was 10. He was old enough to know what was going on in his household, and thank God he told the truth instead of letting his parents intimidate him. And I listened to how intimidating Trezell can sound, especially when the cops start playing good cop, bad cop, and one of them is really going at him like, basically, I don't believe what you're trying to sell me here, dude. Thankfully, that 10-year-old boy will testify as to what he witnessed that night when he heard some kind of noises coming from Orrin. But instead of the boy getting to his brother, Trezell and Jackie got to Orrin first, and they watched as his color faded and he threw up. That's when they never called for aid and decided to keep it all hidden. Apparently, Jackie and Trezell were actually asking their 10-year-old, if I'm not mistaken, should they tell someone about Orrin's death or keep it a secret. That's why Orrin never made it at all to California City, but Orson made it there, but only for 4 days. Orson was only there for 4 days, and apparently there's some kind of witness that's going to talk about, I think, Orson having like a grumpy attitude, arms crossed. I don't blame him. I'm sure he missed his brother. They were likely as close as twins. They were biological brothers, and Trezell's going to tell the cop about them being biological brothers, same mother, different fathers, and Trezell is going to laugh and kind of say, it's complicated, ha ha ha. His whole vibe, Trezell's entire vibe, is going to pit himself as this hero who adopted these little black boys that reminded him of himself, that no one else wanted. Instead, something went wrong, but we don't yet know how Orrin got sick. Personally, and this is just my conjecture from seeing Trezell now, and he's gained weight. Before he was very slight and slender. He looks different. He looks actually a little bit healthier maybe, but it makes me wonder, did Orrin get a hold of some kind of substance? Is that why he got sick and the color drained from his face? Is that why Trezell and Jacqueline are accused of making that horrible decision of deciding to hide his demise from the cops? I mean, heaven forbid your child gets sick. Who would decide, okay, I'll just take a stethoscope and maybe check his heart rate or something, see if he's still breathing at all, and then just keep it a secret? Why would someone do that? They're going to talk about, well, keep it a secret because, maybe we'll get all of our kids taken away if we don't, but that makes no sense. If a child had just gotten sick for whatever reason, call 911. It's just normal instinct. But that's why Orrin never made it to Cal City. So that's what prosecutor Eric Smith opened with his opening statements. He talked about, maybe Trezell grabbed a stethoscope, but he didn't get the child any further medical assistance. And their oldest son could hear Trezell and Jacqueline talking about keeping it all a secret so their other children wouldn't be taken away. Ultimately, they played a voicemail of Jacqueline. It sounded like she was speaking with the boy, her son, and urging him to say, you don't have to talk to them at all. You don't have to talk to the cops. When they get into the nitty-gritty of day one, they're obviously looking at videos of Trezell in his big white huge van driving around the area, and they're talking about how just 6 minutes later he returns from driving, goes in the house, and that's when the call is made, the 911 call that they had also played that day. And they talk about footage from a neighbor that lived to the northeast area on Rome Beauty Drive. Mr. Robert Avalon will be testifying about footage from his home. It looks out towards the desert area, which is near the Aspen end of Aspen Avenue. Mr. Avalon didn't see any children walking into the desert. There's also footage retrieved from other neighbors from 108th Street. There's ring camera footage. That's Mr. Trezell West's van driving around the neighborhood again. It's going to talk about the inconsistencies which led the officers to investigate. That's why the officers were basically babysitting Jacqueline and Trezell. Some are searching the backyard. They're looking to see if this matches up at all to what Jackie and Trezell are claiming happened. And based on some statements that Jacqueline made, cops are actually taking a cadaver dog out into the backyard. You can see the dog there, he says. Sadie, she does know that there is something there, but what? Her handler says it was confused interest, but nonetheless confused interest. They're going to talk about dogs here, and none of these dogs that I can tell are named Chalk. There was some confusion. Trezell had claimed the little boys were outside playing with chalk. People wondered, did he mean chalk, like a dog's name chalk, or like colorful chalk? It sounds like it's just chalk, the kind you write with. But Jacqueline said to them cadaver dog was taken out there and had some notification based on what dog smell was there. Ultimately, the FBI would search through that yard. They couldn't find any bones or no body parts, but the dog did alert or was half confused interest in that location. We were told we would hear Officer Hansen testimony, 4 other children's testimony. They were spoken to in the early morning hours of December 22nd, 2020, and what they said, and especially what 10-year-old Adrian told cops. He was asked specifically about December 19th because that's when they had gone to Wanda West's house. That's the grandmother's house. That's Trezell's mom. Apparently, it's almost like it's pre-planned here, I see. It's like by December 20th, the kids were not home that evening that Jacqueline and Trezell reported Orrin and Orson missing. That's why in the presser, when the crowd starts yelling at Trezell and Jacqueline, one woman asked Trezell, well, where were the other kids at? And he's like, they were at grandma's. So indeed, all the other kids must have been over at Wanda West's house. In my opinion, it was just Jackie and Trezell by themselves making their plan, like, oh, it's time. It's time to enact this plan that we've been planning. I don't know why they chose that day. Again, winter solstice. They chose that night. All 4 kids are away. Orrin and Orson are already in the bosom of Jesus, laughing and having fun in heaven. Oh, Lord. Trezell and Jacqueline are down here planning and plotting like, okay, are we going to enact this plan? Let's call 911. So the other kids couldn't be witnesses and there and speaking with the cops like, wait, that didn't happen. So Jackie and Trezell could tell cops and the world, oh, we were just here with our 3 and 4-year-old Orrin and Orson and whoops, they got out. The other 4 allegedly were off in Bakersfield visiting family. So they were asked, were Orrin and Orson with you when you came to Wanda West's house in Bakersfield on December 19th? These are important questions. Adrian said no. So it's not like they had all 6 kids with them and just 4 of them went off to grandma's house and, you know, Adrian didn't say, yeah, I saw Orrin and Orson there in the van and they stayed and we waved goodbye. No, Adrian is an honest, beautiful little boy. He was interviewed multiple times. He actually told them that Orrin and Orson had left before September. So forget the December 2020 911 call fakery. Adrian, then 10, is telling cops, look, Orrin and Orson have been gone since September. Another biological son of Jackie and Trezell is telling the truth also. He was asked, okay, who was with you in the car on the trip to Bakersfield December 19th? And he said, his brothers. When they clarify, what do you mean your brothers? Who do you mean? Devin, Damien, and Adrian? And that's when he confirmed, yes. This is Aiden. Aiden confirmed that Orrin and Orson were not in the vehicle on that trip, December 19th. He was asked, why didn't Orrin and Orson move to the house? And evidence will show that this little boy said, because they cry a lot. And that his mom and dad said that they went to the place where they used to live. That made me a little like, oh my goodness, the place where they used to live. It made me think of heaven. Some things can be true, even though I believe Jackie and Trezell told a lot of lies. In essence, I believe that was truth in a way. That's the place they used to live. So some people tell lies with truth in it in order to try and come across as credible. Again, investigators are hearing this from not just 1 or 2 children, that the little boys were not in the home in California City, only for, 4 days for one of them. Moving on to Damien and Devin. Damien was very young at the time, but he was asked if they moved to the house. He said yes, but then they left. They were only there a little day or 1 day or something like that, Orrin and Orson at California City. Only 1 day, and then they were gone. So at this point, there's 3 children. It gets convoluted, especially when you can't see. I love learning visually. I like watching people's mouths move. It helps you more than just auditory figure out what's going on. And Devin was asked when the last time he saw Orrin and Orson. He said at the apartment. In the apartments in Bakersfield, not in California City. So when Devin was asked if Orrin and Orson had gone somewhere else, he said Orrin went somewhere else. He went to mom's, grandma's. Again, 4 children of Jacqueline and Trezell. All 4 said they were not with them when they went to grandma's house December 19th. They're going to talk about a Facebook post related to Jacqueline West. The day after the cops go back, the day after these interviews of the 4 boys, and they were informed essentially of what Adrian, Aiden, Devin, and Damien had said. And this is the message that Jackie apparently sent to Wanda West to her contact with the boys. Jackie said, please tell them we love them and miss them. And she also said the boys need to ask for a lawyer if they want to talk to them again. So I get it. Jackie was getting scared because her boys were talking. Bless God, these boys talked. So Jackie learns, these boys are talking. They're telling cops the truth about what they know. So Jackie is messaging Wanda West on Facebook. I guess Wanda West must have had all 4 boys at this point and saying, tell them we love them. At that point, Jackie must have known her goose was cooked. Jackie must have known that, we might be arrested at one point. So I think with her saying, we love you guys, she might have known Grandma or someone else might be watching you permanently. But she's also saying she misses them. And she said, the boys need to ask for a lawyer if cops want to talk to them again. I know people don't really want cops talking to, especially children, without a lawyer present. But again, if you have a clear conscience and a clear heart and these other 2 boys are really missing and you want to find them, you do whatever you could to find them. So they're going to look at all this important neighbors' video footage, and I think we've seen some of it on YouTube already. You know how much AV Watchmen has covered this case and so many other great creators. They're going to see are there just 4 kids getting in that car that day? Why don't we see 6 getting in? There's a screenshot of footage from the home on December 19th. They're talking about 11:35 plus 57 minutes. They see how many people enter the van and drive to the bank. I'm not sure if the time was off and that's why he kept saying plus 57 minutes. Ultimately, the question will be up for you is just how many children entered the van. That return time, 15:44, 3:44 p.m. plus 57 minutes. Again, that's the return of Jackie and Trezell home that day. Total trip time was 5 hours, 9 minutes out. We're going to hear testimony, or if you can listen to the audio. And again, I'll put the link to the audio, but it cannot be recorded. It cannot be rebroadcast. They went to a home on Potomac, 1109 Potomac. That's Wanda and Philip West's home. And from there, they went to Estrada Credit Union, which is on Truxton and South 8th Street. Then they took Wanda home because she had gone with them to Estrada Credit Union. They went to a gas station and to Superior Grocers before they went home. So that's kind of a list of all the places they went. And then none of these security footage show Orrin and Orson, ever there, like with Wanda and Trezell and Jackie. Wanda said she didn't see or hear the kids in the car. She didn't see them or necessarily look for them, but she didn't see them in the car, which I find kind of strange too. So Wanda got in at the home at 1109 Potomac, all the way to Strata Credit Union and all the way back. At no point being in the car did she hear or did she see Orson or see any evidence of them in the car. Perhaps for that part we don't know. Maybe Jackie and Trezell lied to Wanda and said, oh, Orrin and Orson are off on a play date. Or maybe Jackie's mom is taking care of them. Even Jackie's mom, you will hear Jackie talk about her mom saying her mom wouldn't want to come all the way out to that house on Aspen because it was just too far of a drive. Her mom always wanted them coming to her house or her place. They're going to see evidence of the van going to the Strata Credit Union. That big old white truck is Jackie and Trezell at the gas company. That's in East California, Mount Vernon again. No sign of the children, December 19th. The Superior Groceries, the Credit Union, East California. That Chevy van is quite recognizable. The video was there apparently for about 20 minutes. No point could you see Orrin and Orson ever exit that van, nor were they seen. So they moved forward to December 28th at that point. The oldest son of Jackie and Trezell is re-interviewed by Sonia Park, who works for CPS. She's not a law enforcement officer, but she's used to interviewing children. That's what she does. That's when she spoke to Adrian, sitting on the couch, December 28th, 2020. On that date, that's when the oldest boy confessed he heard noises that night coming from Orrin. The first person to find him in the morning was his parents, and what he saw was his color fading. There was throw up coming out of his nose, and ultimately he died in that apartment there in Lois Lane in Bakersfield. And that's when the boy said Jackie and Trezell didn't call for any medical care. Trezell went and grabbed something that looked like a medical device, maybe a stethoscope, but did not discuss getting any medical care for Orrin. They let him die. What they did is they discussed keeping it a secret. That's what the prosecutor said. So their son Adrian, both in his interview and ultimately in later testimony, they asked him I guess Jackie and Trezell, again, are asking their son, should they tell somebody or keep it a secret? You know, they were gaslighting Adrian, I'm sure, saying, you know, if you tell anybody, they'll take away all of you guys from us, from our homes. More testimony about Orson only being in California City for about 4 days. At some point, Adrian heard a loud thud in the night. The day prior to hearing the thud, Orson was there. The day after that, Orson was gone, and he hasn't seen him since. He thought Orson was taken back to his grandma's house. Then they played a call between Jacqueline, Trezell, and Adrian, their oldest son, about a week later. This is a week after what he was opening up and telling the cops what he told them, what happened at the apartment in Bakersfield. But these parents are trying to get Adrian not to talk. They also talked to realtor Robert Dees. I think I texted him, but he never texted me back. But anyway, he had gone out there prior to the Wests moving, and Robert Dees said, I remember seeing 5 children. He also specifically remembers seeing 4 boys playing, and 1 boy was kind of mad with his arms crossed. And I always wonder, was that Orson at the new house on Aspen, and was he mad, kind of mad because he's like, look, where is my brother? I wonder that. He ultimately identified Orson as being, I think, the little mad boy, he said. He only saw 5 children at the California City home. They're going to interview a pest control individual. He recalled 6 to 7 when he went in the home September 15th, but ultimately when they went out to the Chevy van because he wanted to spray the house, he saw 3 to 4 children walking out, 1 being carried out. So again, they go over this math of 5 children. Maria Martinez, Jackie's mom, was asked about the kids, how many she had seen and what have you from the date of moving to December 21st. And she was first interviewed. So Jackie's mom didn't even know the names of Orrin and Orson. So I'm assuming she never even met them. She said she did not watch from September 4th. She had visited October 10th and also some video calls, but I don't know what that means. If Jackie's mom never saw the kids at all, or I guess after September 4th. Ultimately says, I think they were there. I believe they were there. I can't be 100% sure right there. I didn't see them. I didn't see their faces. So of course people's memories will be a little bit off if you don't, have a calendar. If you're not seeing your family members every single week or every single day. There's also a sister, Jackie's sister, I believe, a woman, Miss Martinez. You'll hear her testimony in this case. She did have some video calls, but the camera moved around and she didn't really know who she was looking at or who was who. She does remember seeing Aiden specifically, but that's all she remembers. So at that point, the lawyer said, has anyone seen Orrin or Orson? Now, when it was time for Jacqueline and Trezell's defense attorney, Timothy Hennessy, to give his opening statements, he started speaking about the West family moving to California City during the pandemic, and being a family that was like multiracial, a big family. And he's even going to touch on the fact that Jackie and Trezell got so comfortable with these cops because I'm sure these cops interviewed them for hours and hours. And even if they didn't realize they were being interviewed, boy, stay tuned for day 2 when Trezell talks about God, but then he keeps defaulting to the love of his wife so much, as if he's putting her in the place of God. It's really weird. But anyway, their defense attorney, Mr. Hennessy, he's going to say something about Jackie wasn't treated like the mom of missing children, almost as if officers were disrespecting her. He's talking about someone's hand on her knee or lap or something. The weird part that Mr. Hennessy brought up during his opening statements, that Trezell believes it's more hygienic to sit down when he pees, which again, I know other men do that. I might even agree with it when I think about it, like, whoa, you don't have urine splashing all over the place and on the floor if you're not a good aimer. But the point is, he was saying how comfortable Trezell was with these cops. Trezell and Jackie were so comfortable with the cops, their defense attorney is trying to claim that, they were telling them everything. I guess that was his point of bringing that up. I found it weird. Attorney Hennessy is going to point to the cops and say, you know, it's their fault. Trezell points to the cops a lot too in his interviews. He starts blaming them so much. Attorney Hennessy is going to claim like the cops never thought anyone would abduct little black boys, so that's why cops honed in on Jackie and Trezell. Mr. Hennessy is claiming that Trezell and Jackie aren't guilty of murder because no one knows where the boys are. But of course, the prosecution begs to differ. They're going to present a long list of evidence in the form of DNA, interviews, circumstantial evidence, video evidence, everything that says Orrin and Orson are likely gone and Trezell and Jackie are the ones that likely did it. Mr. Hennessy in his opening statement goes on to say, Trezell and Jacqueline had this great love. That love manifested into this beautiful family of 8 total, you know, before Orrin and Orson disappeared. And he will say, oh, they moved out to the desert during the pandemic, you know, trying to build their little family. During the pandemic, some people hoarded toilet paper. People moved on because they saw, you know, their area, urban blight or whatever. This is the attorney claiming these are the reasons why Trezell and Jackie moved out to Cal City. You know, it's like he's giving them a motive or motivation for moving, not the fact that one of their sons allegedly was done away with by them. Maybe that was the impetus for them moving. No, he's going to claim, oh, they just wanted to get out of the area and move off to the desert to build their beautiful family. They went out to Cal City to try and be reliant, he said. And let's face it, he said they were a unique family out there in California City. They were a biracial family of 8, an artist who was Jackie, a producer who was Trezell. So they're this unique family that homeschooled their children. And he admitted, yes, they make about $4,000 per month to take care of that family. Now, I don't know if he means $4,000 came from the state totally to take care of these children that they rescued from the foster care system. At one point, Jackie will admit during some of these interviews that they do make more money fostering or adopting or whatever the state pays them. They make more money that way than being an artist, which can make sense sometimes. So Mr. Hennessy is trying to praise Trezell and Jacqueline, quote, for taking care of kids that none of us would have taken care of. And he claims this fact is suspicious to Cal City. The fact that Trezell and Jackie would adopt little black boys. So that's, with all this mounting evidence against them, that's Trezell and Jacqueline's defense attorney's strategy. You know, just blame the investigators. He's accusing them, I guess, of, you know, being racist or just focusing in on Trezell and Jackie, and they're so suspicious. They're such a multiracial family. Mr. Hennessy will say, with uniqueness comes oddness. Now we know, of course, all of us artists can be quirky, but this is where Mr. Hennessy is going to explain away the oddness of the things that Jackie and Trezell talk about with the cops. Their lawyers claiming that Trezell and Jackie are always forthright with cops. But when we get to the end of day 2, we can tell that's not true. We're going to talk about how Trezell gets really heated. He's going to ask if he's under arrest. He's not liking the way cops are treating him and approaching him because the cops are going to talk to the kids, and eventually Trezell will find out that the cops have already talked to his kids. Trezell will start going off and he's like, I'm out of here. Am I under arrest? I'm good to go. I thought you guys were helping us. Their lawyer claims that Trezell and Jackie sometimes say stuff that's true. Sometimes, he said, but Cal City doesn't want to hear it. He talks about how Jacqueline will talk about her wedding anniversary, and indeed, she's the one who does forget it. Trezell doesn't like when she forgets their wedding anniversary. Trezell explains that it is easier and more hygienic to sit down when he pees. I find that so interesting that their defense attorney put that in his opening statement. I knew that would make a weird headline. Not a funny case, but it's odd the way this defense attorney is grasping at straws. He's including stuff like this to try and make Jackie and Trezell seem quirky, like artists, like bohemians, they're heroes. They adopted these kids that no one else wanted, and the cops just didn't know what to do with these parents, so they just honed in on these two weirdos as suspects instead of what's closer to the truth, and that truth is that the cops noticed a lot of discrepancies from the start. This is the level of openness that Trezell and Jackie are giving the Cal City PD so they can, check them off and clear them as suspects and get down to, the real person who did it, the real person, whomever this person is, who took their kids away. Trezell and Jackie started adopting, according to their lawyer, because they heard about children who are brothers who can get torn apart in the system. They can get split apart. Now, if that were true, it is very noble, and there are so many foster parents, adoptive parents out there that do an amazing job. They literally do change the path of a child's life for the better. And I don't know if it started out that way with Jackie and Trezell, but we have to look at those folks too who go into it for not all the best reasons, especially in California where there could be lots of money to be made, and if a person is struggling, maybe their intentions aren't so pure. With Trezell, the info we found out on day 2 was that Trezell wanted all boys, and he talked about how girls come with their own sets of problems in the system. He's a weird one. The lawyer tries to paint Trezell as a hero. He was working as a security guard, and back then Trezell realized all I'm doing is getting paid to prevent people who are hungry and homeless from stealing food. So Trezell said, well, why don't I just switch things up and try and help some kids? That's when Trezell realized there are not a lot of black males who are out there who are going to be fathers to children in the system. Very noble, if indeed it were true, and if Orrin and Orson hadn't suffered some horrible fate. Now, the opening statement gets a little wonky from Jackie and Trezell's defense attorney. He starts talking about the cops explaining to Trezell, once you have about 60 kids in and out of your house and a teenager puts hands on you, things get different. I don't know if they're talking about the officer's experience with fostering. Maybe we'll see more in the trial. So the defense attorney is saying Cal City cops have no experience with adopting or fostering, and they still don't like the answers that Trezell and Jackie were giving. I don't know how many children Trezell and Jackie have actually fostered over the years, if it's been more than 6. Trezell explained he, got Orrin and Orson because they were 2 little black boys just like him. Indeed, Trezell will talk about Orrin and Orson being fully black, all black. He talks about his 2 biological children with Jackie, obviously part black, part Hispanic. They have another set in the middle of adopted children, and it sounds like they're biracial, multiracial as well, because Trezell will mention later that Orrin and Orson were 100% black. And part of me can't help but wonder, was that part of some self-hatred thing that Trezell will say, I got these little boys because, they were just like me. They reminded me of me. I don't know if Trezell was ever in the system, but in terms of these boys reminded me of myself, these 2 little black boys. And so it's so horrible what happened to them. I'm like, did Trezell hate himself? Did he hate himself? Is that why Orrin and Orson, went missing and suffered that fate? And again, the defense attorney is taking the tactic that Trezell took by blaming the cops. He's saying, oh, Jackie and Trezell are sitting here in this courtroom because the 2 little boys went missing and cops can't find them. So that's why Jackie and Trezell are sitting here. I don't think any jury in the world is going to buy this, unless it's an OJ jury. So there's videos that are obviously shown. The defense attorney is going to claim that Trezell turned some type of lights on when he realized the children were missing. Yeah, Trezell is going to say he thinks the boys went missing in 3 minutes, and then officers are like, wait a minute, what? The defense attorney is claiming, oh, officers didn't like that. Well, when you hear the actual interview, if only we could play it, you will see that cops are asking Trezell, like, how long were your eyes basically not on the boys? Trezell's claiming he's getting all this wood. He didn't know the status, I guess, of the gate in the backyard. He claims he just went inside, maybe 3 minutes tops. Didn't really do anything inside. So the cops are saying, okay, it took you 3 long minutes. If you went inside, did you use the bathroom? Did you do something, that would take 3 minutes? No, he's claiming, oh, you can hear him snapping. I was in and out, basically. So then Trezell switches it. Oh, maybe really it was 35, 40 seconds or something like that. Trezell's story is all over the place, and I understand it could be if you don't really remember your steps of what you did, but when your story's all out of whack and video evidence does not bear it out, that's why these cops got suspicious. So obviously the jury, even in opening statements, the jury is getting to see video. They're seeing a car on 108th Street. Their defense attorney is going to point to some other dude, there's some car on 108th Street in the area around the time the boys went missing, trying to throw doubt and claim that someone just that quickly within seconds, and Trezell's, 3 minutes or 35 to 45 seconds reminds me of other cases of missing children, unfortunately, where it's like, oh, I was only gone 60 seconds. I was only gone 2 minutes. So their lawyer starts pointing to all the registered offenders in the area. Of course, point to all these boogeymen out there who most likely did it. Anything to take the doubt, don't cast aspersions on their clients. And then their lawyer goes on to blame cops for not talking to these offenders until January 1st. So he starts counting all the way from December 21st through December 31st and blaming cops for waiting that long to talk to other people. The defense attorney starts talking about someone named Hector Rodriguez, who's afraid for his safety, telling cops you need to check a house in Blythe, and cops didn't talk to him. Now this is where the defense attorney gloms onto some statement in CPS. There is video footage of the children walking down the street. No one really knows where that came from. No one knows who said it. And at this point, the attorney is saying, well, they'll brush that off. And unfortunately, sometimes people do make comments like this. That's why it really depends on the tone, and I love to see facial expressions. Someone could say, for example, and I do remember this at the beginning of this case, someone could say, there is video footage of them walking down the street, as if they saw it or knew it for a fact. Someone could really be saying, oh, there's video footage of them walking down the street. It depends on the person and their intention, the way people use words sometimes. Maybe someone said that, I don't know, to make everyone feel better. Like, oh, don't worry. Like, I'm sure there's video footage of them walking down the street. Like, I'm sure we'll be able to find it and find them. Who knows? But people do make odd statements which they have no basis in fact, or they don't speak correctly what their thoughts are. But the defense attorney is glomming onto that fact in his opening statement. A woman in Texas apparently called cops, and that's where one of the attorneys asked, Your Honor, if we could have a sidebar. So I think, and that's where the opening statements kind of shut off at that point during day one. Maybe the defense attorney was going too far testifying, or I don't know what he did wrong. So when they came back, it's like other cases. Mr. Hennessy is claiming the dog couldn't do much because so many people were walking around and contaminating the space. The cadaver dog, the dogs that were out there couldn't do anything. The job they gave that dog, according to the defense attorney, is follow the route that Trezell's van took to see if they find body parts. The defense attorney is like claiming, oh, they were onto him the first night, or they had tunnel vision. And those cops were probably correct. The defense attorney is going to attack the interviews, attack the footage. He's going to claim that Detective Hansen's interview techniques are improper. That's what he's claiming right there. That is a table. That is Miss West. That is a hand on her thigh. So the defense attorney, boom, is saying, the defense attorney is like, wow, Officer Hansen had his hand on Jacqueline West's thigh. So he's coming out guns blazing against these cops to say, claiming they're incompetent. It reminds me of when you can't attack the evidence, you start attacking the investigators or, all this other stuff. The defense attorney is claiming it's a tragic accident is what the evidence will show. The bottom line is just out the gate, Cal City never thought anyone would take two little black boys. That's what their defense attorney claims. This is Trezell West, this is Jacqueline West, and their two little boys are missing. That's what the defense attorney says, trying to draw that sympathy from the jury. At that point, opening statements concluded on day one after defense attorney Alexia Torres Stallings wished to reserve her opening. So opening statements concluded, so the video was shut off at that point. Kern County continued to stream audio. That's when the dispatcher who took Trezell West's call, Talia Alterlejo, took the stand. So she's a dispatcher at the California Police Department. She knows her stuff. She was questioned about all these different codes. 10-6, this, that, what does that mean? She knows her stuff. So it was December 21st, 2020, when she was working as a dispatcher and got the call from Trezell West, which was a weird call. We could hear Trezell West saying 10717 Aspen Avenue when she answered and said, "What's the location of your emergency?" She asked if it was an apartment or a house. He said a house, like he had to think about it for a second. And she's like, what's going on there? And he's kind of like, "Oh, I was wondering, did anybody call? Like they found some children or something? They're black, they're little black boys. My sons, I can't find them." He doesn't really he sounds kind of nonplussed, like, my sons, I can't find them. They were in the backyard earlier. All of a sudden, I can't find them. I searched the property. I can't find them. Me and my wife. She said, "No. How long have they been gone for?" It's too dark outside. You'll notice that pattern whenever Trezell and Jackie are asked more for specifics, like, how long this, what time that? They'll kind of divert, and instead of giving an exact time or, something, they'll answer the question with a non-answer. Man, maybe, I don't know, I can't really tell. So she asked him directly, "When was the last time you saw them?" He says, "I was outside in the little lot getting wood next door, maybe about 20 minutes, but they were outside playing in the yard." So now she's trying to get facts. How old are they? 3 and 4, he says. She asks, what sort of clothing were they wearing? So the youngest was wearing a black sweater, black sweatpants, he says, and the oldest was wearing black sweater, black shirt, black sweater, long sleeve sweater, and some gray sweatpants. Part of me wonders, is that really what they were wearing the last time he saw them in September? Or was he kind of thinking on his feet and trying to come up with something like, "Oh, it's December now, I better say they were wearing, long sleeve, warmer clothing." What are their names? Orrin and Orson, he says. Which one's the 3-year-old? I'm sorry, say that again, he said. He's Orson. And so she gets the proper spelling. The 4-year-old is Orrin, and he explains how to spell it Orrin because it's not the conventional means of spelling. Later on day 2, we'll see an interview, or we heard an interview where he talks about, their other 2 adoptive children choosing their own name and how it changes a child as soon as they know their name is changed, as if it changes them for the better and gives them a fresh start or something. And that's where Trezell gets a little confused. Again, the dispatcher is asking, "What's your name?" "Trezell West," he says, "and spell that." And he's like, oh, what, my name? Kind of the way he was distracted at the presser, like, of course, the crowd was yakking then, but he spells Trezell. So she's asking, reiterating, "Okay, you're saying they were playing in the backyard of 10717 Aspen Avenue? You saw them playing, it's been 20 minutes, and you can't find them?" And he's like, "Yeah." Almost like he doesn't believe his own story. "Do any of them have any special conditions?" Trezell said, No. "Any health concerns?" "No," he says. "As soon as I have someone available, I'll have them come out there with you." And he says, "Okay, thank you." She says, "Call back if you find them." "I will, thank you, I appreciate it." So he's throughout this whole thing, we don't really see emotions or hear emotions from Trezell and Jackie. You only hear emotions from Trezell. Strong emotions is when he gets angry at the cops, when he thinks he's the one being blamed or he's about to be arrested. After that, you hear some pretty strong questioning of some of the cops, majoring in the minutia. It's like they're asking about which reports were filed and why did you go in this room and where did you go here and where'd you go there. Just trying to put the cops on the stand and take the heat off of Jackie and Trezell. One attorney was trying to blame body-worn cameras and footage in her line of questioning. He questioned a cop who said he only spoke with a couple of neighbors and when he was canvassing the area. Now, one cop did say he saw chalk located in the backyard on a concrete slab, so it really was the kind of chalk that people wrote with. Later, cops went to the 1109 Potomac Avenue, where they went to speak with either Grandma or Grandpa West. So that house became kind of famous too, a house of protest. When the protests moved from Aspen Avenue, where, the house was being kind of violated with bricks thrown through the window and what have you, people moved over to Potomac Avenue to ask, where are the boys? Day 2, a cop is heard on his body cam telling Trezell that these kids didn't just walk away. It was Officer Brian Hansen who testified, the one whom Mr. Hennessy is claiming put his hand on Jackie's thigh. There was a shoe print appeared to be made just from a sandal, nothing else. Hansen is claiming this isn't a normal situation. These kids just don't walk away. He's saying there's no video of your kids walking away. There's only one way that your kids left, if they left on foot. And Trezell is kind of like, well, that's y'all's job to figure out. Wait. You didn't see me get the branches from that lot when I got the branches. Trezell talked about those stupid damn branches so many times that it was like enough already. Trezell was using that as an excuse to claim, well, I was collecting branches and firewood. And I believe he really did that, probably as part of his story. But Trezell is claiming, well, since all these surveillance cameras didn't catch me collecting branches, they probably didn't catch Orrin and Orson running away out of the gate somewhere. A gate so heavy, apparently, it's the strength for an adult to push, not little kids. And again, Trezell started talking about hitting corners as fast as possible, claiming he drove around about 10 minutes looking for the boys. He sounded really angry as the cops questioned him. And to add to my notes, I'm going to put links to KGE-TV, 17 News on Twitter. They did a great job live tweeting both days, so it'll add on to, collectively, give you an idea of everything that happened. The stuff I picked up that they may not have tweeted and vice versa. So cops said they saw Trezell making lefts and not stopping to talk to anyone. And the cops were like, listen here, bro, cut it. We have the facts. Trezell is arguing back, like saying, you don't have the facts, but they're telling him you're being defensive. You don't even care. You just care about being caught in a lie. That's when Trezell talks about his former job in loss prevention, a security officer, and he's saying, I just want my sons. That's when he starts to try and get a little worked up. I want you to understand, I am worried. I don't ever hear like Trezell, his voice breaking or getting emotional. He sounds very stoic, like a soldier, like he's just so, you don't hear the desperation for him. He claims he's worried about the boys and if they're cold and all that, and they're going to play that famous presser, but you don't hear the brokenness of like a parent who's just like desperate. Like, who has the babies? Where did they go? Oh, my Lord, please find them, getting on TV. In fact, Jackie is going to kind of complain on day 2 in a video to a cop. She's talking about Christmas presents and all that stuff because it was near Christmas time. And she's going to complain about, like, media. She's making it seem like, she's worried about her other 4 children. So, she doesn't want the media basically bothering them because of her 4 other children. But if it were a real missing child situation, the parents, I believe, would be desperate for media attention. They would be out there like every day that the media would want to cover the case, putting Orrin and Orson's faces out there like, please find them. Trezell is obsessed over the cameras not catching him, picking up the wood or throwing it over the fence and stuff. There's a good cop, bad cop situation going on. Trezell starts to bring up race when a cop says, he knows where he's taking Trezell. Whoever that cop was, I kind of liked him because he's like, look, I'm going to take you somewhere and it's not going to be that gentleman's house whom Trezell claimed he spoke with during the search. Trezell is claiming, oh yeah, I looked everywhere for the boys. I hit a bunch of corners. I talked to a gentleman over there. He didn't know who the gentleman was. So Trezell keeps getting caught up on these minor details like, Come on, take me over there. Take me over to the gentleman's house. I'll prove that I talked to him. The cop's like, I'll show you, I'll tell you where I'm going to take you. It's not that gentleman's house. So in inferring, look, I'm taking you to jail. So that made Trezell mad. He said, I literally have taken on 4 children from the system. All 4 are black. I don't want it to go in that direction where it feels like it's going. And the cop is like, yeah, one cop is like, yeah, he's starting to play the race card, But there's ring video footage from 108th Street near Trezell's house. Securo Chavez, he's a city employee. There was Trezell's big white van, the one we've been seeing in front of Jackie and Trezell's house. That's when Trezell gets into the fact that Orrin and Orson have the same biological mom, different dads. It's complicated, he said, but he adopted the boys April 2019. He's going to talk about how one of the boys had his legs broken by his brother or something like that, and that's how Orrin and Orson ended up in the system. But again, he said the boys were outside playing with chalk, running around. That's why they were outside. Trezell said he was throwing wood over the fence. Trezell said he came in to check the fireplace and he went back out and it dawned on him that the boys weren't there. That's one thing he says often, it dawned on me. I guess Trezell wasn't too worried because he said, what's the worst that could happen? Because I've had foster kids for so long. So I guess this is something that they have maybe done repeatedly, or maybe he means I've been fostering the same children for so long until I adopted them. But he said I went directions that he thought he would have gone as a child. He's trying to get in the mind of a child, Trezell claims, and he was hitting all these corners. They talk about Mia and Violet, the dogs. Violet is the big dog. I hadn't heard the name Chalk mentioned, so I think that's not a dog's name. Violet, she would have left, Trezell said. Their dogs bark all the time. So I think Trezell's trying to say if Orrin and Orson had left the yard and the gate was open, Violet would have followed them. What's Trezell's theory of how the boys left the house? He doesn't know. He keeps blaming the cops for their lack of resources, even though the cops are going to say, we are spending so much money here. I don't know how much they spent on that investigation. We know the FBI got involved. They were spending so much money, resources. Trezell is blaming them for their lack of resources, shifting the blame back onto cops. I'm just worried about my son. Trezell sounds like he's kind of fake crying as cops press him on stuff not making sense. So Jackie's mom's name is Maria Martinez. They're asking about fights or money problems. Jackie told the cops that with the pandemic, they weren't selling as much art, but you could tell Jackie must have been pointing out artwork on her walls or something, art she's done, because the cop was admiring it. Trezell was a music producer. He would sell his beats and stuff. This is where Jackie brings up, there's a slight concern. I don't mind the media. We do have 2 other children that are adopted as well. You're talking about the 7 and 6-year-old at that point. The cop is like, look, we can't do too much about the media. The community is pretty concerned. He's trying to tell Jackie, look, you're sitting up here worried about the media, but the community basically is out there looking for your boys. Jackie's talking about how much money they get for watching the children, but it's hard to hear her voice. Like, hopefully in the courtroom, that's why I defer to KGET a lot, because sitting in the courtroom, I hope they could hear better than the audio streaming online. A lot of it was sounded pretty far away. The cop is just asking, you don't know anyone who would take the boys? Jackie was kind of saying, I do know, but, and I couldn't hear what. But this is when Jackie talked about her and Trezell getting married. She said March 5th, I believe, 2010. My husband gets mad if I don't remember. So that's where it's usually where, the cop is trying to empathize. He's like, yeah, it's usually the man who might forget the wedding date, not the wife. But their son, Adrian, was born the same year they got married. Their other son, a couple of years later. The cop there was doing a great job. He was asking, did the kids get to pick out their stockings? Did the kids get to pick out their stockings, like their Christmas stockings? And Jackie is like, yes, Orrin, Orson, Damien, etc. The cops asked for a voluntary cheek swab, and they said yes for DNA. Would they be willing to give up their cell phones? Jackie's like, would you guys take it? That's how I contact I don't mind. They're just saying, I don't mind if you look through it. Trezell's like, we need the phone. The cops are trying to say, okay, if we don't take it, can we just kind of like borrow your phones? I know they just wanted to get a download of it. But they start talking about family. Trezell said he's real close with his dad, but he doesn't talk with him much. His younger brother, Josiah, Trezell said they bump heads. But I think their family came to their rescue. At least Trezell's family looked like they were sticking with him and probably Jackie's family too, when, people would see Trezell dressed in all that weird gear, walking down the street, trying to hide from the crowd, the protesters. So also on day 2, they played that famous presser, I almost know it by heart, that Trezell and Jackie gave in front of that angry crowd. Trezell told the cops at that point he's 34, he ran track in high school, they don't have friends out in Cal City. It's hard to hear that interview too. How many kids do you have? 6. There's Adrian, Aiden, 10 and 7, back then, the first bio children, Devon and Damien, and then Oren and Orson. That's when Trezell talked about Oren and Orson being black. They're all black. The other kids are part Hispanic, apparently. Trezell says definitively, I wanted all boys because girls have issues. He was calling his oldest son a genius. Trezell thinks he'll be an astronaut, despite what parents say or what they've done. I pray for these other children and everything they've witnessed and been through, and God bless and favor them. Then Trezell calls Devon mischievous and anger issues. He chose his name, but he also says, he defends changing their names because he says the moment, kids change their names after they're adopted, they act differently. Oren, his dad, Trezell says, no, his brother broke his leg. Orson, they were both in the system. Trezell starts talking about how much Oren cried. I'm talking cried. I've never seen it before, maybe when he was like 1 or 2. Anytime someone left, he cried, like separation anxiety. Oren, the 4-year-old, anger issues, said Trezell, and Orson was like fire, boom, 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 all around the place. But maybe that lends itself to perhaps what happened to them. I wonder if Trezell lost his patience with these boys who cried a lot. Then they got into a weird conversation. The cop was somehow asking Trezell, you're big into God, huh? And Trezell's like, no. But he's like, I used to think I go to church feeling God's presence. I was confused. I was 18. I think he said God is like a vibration. It was him or she, but not what we've been taught. The Bible, the Quran, if you really study it. My wife tells me she truly loves me. Again, check KGET's Twitter feed. They have so much great detail because it was like, what is Trezell saying? He kept elevating his love for Jackie and his wife loving him, and almost as if that was above God, or I don't know what he was trying to say. But Trezell said he never really felt God's presence in church, but he feels real love with his wife. So an officer's like kind of going along to get along, like you and your wife are really ride or die. And Trezell says that's how he feels. I wonder if they're still like, speaking to each other now. You look at these couples like Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell and others, like, okay, are they still like ride or die for each other? Basically, they spent day 2 playing an interview where a cop is trying to nail down Trezell's activities over the weekend before the kids were reported missing. It's an exercise in confusion. Trezell keeps talking about top ramen soup and, oh, did we eat that day or this that day? It's like he's trying to make up scenarios. The last time you seen the kids, it was open, Trezell said about the gate. He was only gone 3 minutes walking in and out the house. Then he changed it to say, maybe 35 to 45 seconds. Then when he was out driving around, allegedly using his flashlight, the cop was like, when did you slow down and use your flashlight? So Trezell is saying something like, I'm on Bay because they can't get this far. I don't know the names of the streets. Yeah, I'm riding my brakes. I'm not driving that fast. The cops aren't buying it because they already know, I believe, the video evidence does not corroborate what he's saying. But he talks about the kids coming in with so much baggage. Money doesn't heal that. I think he's like trying to excuse the fact that some people really do only foster children or adopt children for the benefits they can get. Trezell is making it sound like this altruistic, high-minded, activity that him and Jackie sacrificed instead of some money-making venture. But Trezell said, God will forbid if something happened to them, it'll affect the remaining 4 children. He's like, I want my boys back. I don't want these boys going into the system. Then the cop is asking Trezell, does your mom watch your kids a lot? And then Trezell is just like, no, she doesn't watch them at all. And every time he makes something definitive, they press in and he kind of changes the tune. He's like, well, she watched some way back when they were first adopted. I don't know if he means Oren and Orson or their adoptive brothers. And the cop is like, look, enough small talk. God bless these cops. They will sit there and talk for like an hour. Small talk, win them over, get them on their side. But then the cop is like, look, you and your wife's stories don't match. I want to know where your 2 children are. They haven't been missing since, recently. We talked to your mom. She hasn't seen them. This is where Trezell kind of gives himself away. He goes, of course she hasn't. Since when? September? Trezell is kind of just giving himself away. And the cop is like, you're lying to me. We talked to your kids and they have not seen these babies in weeks. Trezell, your kids say you tell them they'll be back soon. And this is where it starts getting heated towards the end of day 2. The cop said, no one has the truth except you and your wife. And you know who else knows? God knows all. Trezell said, we didn't do anything. Our babies went missing that day I called y'all. The cop says, you have shown no emotion. Your wife has shown no emotion. Trezell tries to get mad over the cops talking to his kids. He's always just like diverting the conversation, like, wait a minute, you talked to my kids? I thought you said you didn't. And, cops can lie anyway. But the one cop was like, I didn't talk to him like the other officer did. The other officer says, yeah, I went to your mom's house. The kids were sleeping. I woke each one up individually and each one had the same story. And that was the more truthful story, so he knew, okay, these kids aren't lying to me. If these kids, I'm waking them up independently and they're telling me they haven't seen Orrin and Orson in weeks. Then Trezell is like, am I under arrest? Am I good to go? Is my wife good to go? I'm not talking no more. And they were saying like, no, your wife's staying here. And Trezell's kind of like, what? Oh, she wants to talk? Okay, kind of like, fine, she can stay here. Now, there's only 10 minutes left of that interview. That's where we ended on Wednesday, March 29th. They'll start again Thursday, March 30th at 9 a.m. So again, if you want to listen, I will put the links below to the Kern County, if you don't have it, Kern County website where you can listen. But please remember, again, we are not allowed to record and rebroadcast or live stream or anything. We don't want our abilities to be taken away to even hear what's going on. Lamentations 3:22 through 23. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I will still try and keep up and see how long this case goes. Of course, we're all waiting for the Letitia Stout trial to start April 3rd, the meat of it to start. So we'll see if I switch over to covering that more, but I wanted to cover as much as I could here since people have a great interest in this trial. And you have all the links to KGET, and you have the links to the Kern County website. So if you want more and want to hear it real time, you can keep up that way as well. Thanks so much for watching all this. Take care.